You'd think it would start with a lipstick smear or a whiff of cologne that wasn't mine. That's the kind of stuff people talk about when you hear infidelity stories over drinks or on late-night forums. But for me, it started with a Chase Freedom Unlimited card statement I didn't recognize. It showed up in the mailbox like any other letter. I almost didn't notice it. The envelope was plain, without the glossy inserts or promotional junk. No name on the outside either, just a logo and an address. We had a rule. I handled the bills, the insurance, the budgeting. Claire was fine with it, said numbers gave her migraines. She'd rather be chasing deadlines at her design firm or finding joy in redecorating a house that didn't need redecorating. I didn't mind. I'm an accountant. Budgets make sense to me. Order, control, clarity. But that envelope, something about it felt off. I opened it. The card wasn't in my name. It was in Claire's. A card I never knew existed. Issued last month. Balance already north of $4,700. The first line hit me like a gut punch. Hotel Bluestone, $312. 58. Room service, valet, a one-night stay. That was 2 weekends ago, when Claire told me she was driving down to her mother's to help her reorganize the garage. The second line was sharper. Caravan Cafe, $48. 91. I remembered that receipt. Claire handed it to me herself, said it was a team lunch and wanted it deducted from her freelance expense report. But it was charged to this secret card, not the shared one we use for work stuff. It got worse from there. Silken Petals Spa, D&M Photography, Cavallo's Fine Jewelry, Stonebridge Florist. All in a tight cluster of 3 weeks. I just stood in the kitchen, the paper trembling slightly in my hand. I could hear the kids upstairs, Maya and Jonah, bickering over whose Lego pieces belonged to whom. Claire was in the shower, singing softly behind closed doors like nothing was wrong. And me? I was unraveling inside. We'd been married for 11 years. Claire was the only woman I ever wanted. I met her at a college alumni event. She walked up, bold as brass, and asked if I'd always been this serious or if life had just beaten the humor out of me. I married her a year later. We built a life that looked perfect from the outside. The kind of life people envy. 2 beautiful kids, a house with a wraparound porch, 2 cars in the garage, and matching lawn chairs we never had time to use. I used to joke that we were the opening shot of a movie before the plot kicked in. Now I was holding the plot in my hands. I didn't confront her right away. Maybe that makes me weak. But I've always been the kind of man who needs to understand before he acts. I'm not impulsive. My father used to say, measure twice, cut once. I live by that. So I waited. I took photos of the statement, hid it behind the furnace in the garage. Then I logged into the credit card's online portal using the information printed on the back page. Password reset. Security questions. I knew all the answers. Her mother's maiden name. Our anniversary. The street she grew up on. Access granted. What I saw made me feel like I'd swallowed glass. Dozens of transactions. Some local. Some far. Most were low enough to avoid suspicion, like someone skimming the surface just beneath the radar. I created a spreadsheet. Dates. Vendors. Amounts. I color-coded them by city. Atlanta, Charlotte, Nashville. She hadn't gone to any of those places. Not as far as I knew. She had always claimed to be traveling for freelance jobs, client meetings, creative retreats. She brought back receipts for gas and coffee and notebooks filled with sketches. She told me about traffic jams and roadside diners. I believed it all. I was a fool. One charge stood out. Thatcher Studio Lofts, $1,126. A monthly rental fee. The studio was in our city, downtown, near the Arts District. The listing described it as an inspired creative sanctuary for artists, photographers, and romantics. Romantics. I waited until Friday. Claire left for her supposed team building overnight at a coworker's cabin. She even kissed me on the forehead, tousled Jonah's hair, and hugged Maya like it was any other day. I watched her car disappear down the road before grabbing my coat. I drove to Thatcher Lofts. The building was nicer than I expected. Brick facade, big windows, soft industrial lighting. I parked across the street and waited. Part of me hoped no one would show. That maybe I'd read the signs wrong. That the studio was just a workspace. But at 8:47 p.m., I saw him. He walked up to the building with keys in hand, casual as you please. Tall, dark hair, confident stride, carrying a bottle of wine in one hand and what looked like Claire's overnight bag in the other. I recognized it. blue leather, initials embossed on the handle. The door clicked open. He stepped inside. Lights flicked on. A few minutes later, the curtains shifted. A silhouette moved behind them. Two forms. His. Hers. I sat there, engine running, trying to breathe. Claire wasn't at a cabin. She was here. With him. That night, I didn't sleep. I drove aimlessly for hours. Ended up in a gas station parking lot at 3 a.m. eating a stale muffin, staring at the glow of my phone. Every transaction I'd logged, every charge I'd overlooked, now made perfect sense. The secret credit card wasn't just a tool, it was a map, and it had led me straight to the truth. Straight to him. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I was going to find out who he was. And then I was going to make them both wish that card had never been opened. I started the next morning like any other. Maya wanted French toast. Jonah spilled orange juice. And Claire texted me from the cabin, saying she'd be home late because of traffic on the Tulane. I told her to drive safe, sent a smile emoji, and kissed our kids on the forehead like nothing inside me was broken. Then, once they were at school, I went hunting. The man from the loft haunted me like a bad tune. His face was burned into my brain. Handsome in an effortless way, the kind of man who always looks composed, like he never fumbles with his keys or forgets birthdays. I started by checking property records for Thatcher Lofts. Nothing. The units were mostly rented short-term through a creative agency called Nest and Nook. It took 2 calls pretending to be a curious artist looking to rent the same unit to get the name of the current occupant. Jason Maddox. The receptionist chirped, but that unit won't be available for at least another month. He extended his stay. Jason Maddox. I ran the name through public records, social media, anything I could get. He was everywhere and nowhere at once. A photographer, apparently. Freelance, according to his sparse LinkedIn. No family photos. No tagged posts. Just black and white images of women with cigarette smoke curling around their fingers, blurred streetlights, and crumpled bedsheets. His Instagram bio read, "I chase beauty and shadow, often in the same places." I memorized that line. It was cliché, pretentious, and it sounded exactly like the kind of man Claire would fall for when she was tired of stability. I thought of every conversation we'd had over dinner in the past year where she'd looked past me. Every time she said she missed painting, missed the fire she once had. How she said I made things too neat, too safe. Claire had never wanted a dangerous life. Just one that wasn't so predictable. I was predictable. On Wednesday, she brought me coffee in bed like she used to when we first got married. She curled up next to me, wrapped one leg over mine, and rested her head on my chest. I almost forgot. Almost. But all I could think about was how, for days earlier, she was with him. Maybe in the same shirt. Maybe with the same head tilt, the same sigh. I knew I needed more. I needed to see them. Together. So, I rented a unit 2 doors down from Jason's loft. Said I was a digital artist looking for inspiration. I paid 2 months up front, no questions asked. The space came furnished, bare bones, but functional. Concrete floors, a small kitchenette, massive windows that turned golden in the late afternoon. I installed a discrete camera above the door to Jason's unit using a magnetic mount. Motion activated. It fed footage to an app one could check from anywhere. Then I waited. Claire came twice that week. Once in the late morning, once just after dusk. Each time she wore jeans and no wedding ring. Each time she carried takeout and left with nothing. He never walked her out. He didn't have to. That's not how affairs work. They live in stolen time, in between the cracks of real life. On Saturday, I followed her. She left the house in gym clothes, claiming to meet Becca, her friend from the design firm, for a yoga and brunch date. Instead, she drove downtown and parked in a paid garage 2 blocks from Thatcher. I watched her walk to the loft. 10 minutes later, the camera caught her knocking. He opened the door shirtless, took her hand, pulled her inside. The door clicked shut. I stared at the screen. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It beat slow, steady, deliberate. That terrified me more than anything. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry. I was calculating. The rest of the day passed like fog. I picked up the kids from soccer, laughed when Jonah tried to juggle oranges in the back seat, and helped Maya finish her science project. We made spaghetti for dinner. Claire walked in around 8, glowing. Said Becca had a crisis, and they spent the day detoxing over brunch and retail therapy. She kissed me. I kissed her back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, reliving every moment of our marriage. From our first tiny apartment where the hot water barely lasted through one shower, to the morning Maya was born and I held Claire's hand through 16 hours of labor. All of it tainted now. The next morning, I woke up early and drove to Thatcher. The streets were still quiet. A bakery truck was unloading, pigeons pecked at invisible crumbs. I waited in the car until 8:23 a.m. Then I walked to Jason Maddox's door and knocked. He opened it half awake, t-shirt wrinkled, hair unkempt. His face was almost too perfect up close, symmetrical, smooth, untouched by the stress that seemed embedded in every fiber of my being. "Can I help you?" he asked, blinking in the daylight. "I know who you are," I said, my voice calm. "And I know what you've been doing." His jaw tensed, but only slightly. He didn't deny it. "Look," he started, stepping forward. "I don't know what." "She's married." I cut in. "To me." Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt? Amusement? I couldn't tell. "You need to end it," I said, keeping my tone flat, "or the fallout will bury you both." He didn't answer. I turned and walked away. But I wasn't done. I wasn't looking for apologies. I wasn't looking for explanations. I was planning revenge. Back home, I began gathering everything. I printed photos from the camera footage, compiled transactions from the secret card, backed up all the audio I'd recorded using the mic I had planted in her car the day after I found the card. I knew her route. I knew their routines. Then, I printed it all, 3 identical binders, color-coded, labeled. One for Claire, one for Jason, and one for someone who'd make sure it went public. Not just within our social circle, but everywhere that mattered to them. I wasn't just going to confront them. I was going to expose them. But not yet. Not until I finished the final piece of my plan. Something that would ensure neither of them could escape the storm that was coming. The first person I approached wasn't a friend or a lawyer. It was a stranger. His name was Marcus Gellert, a name I only knew from a byline. Investigative journalist. Wrote a series of exposés about corporate fraud, local government cover-ups, and a gym teacher scandal that ended a political career. Marcus had a reputation for details, and for being vicious when the story warranted it. I emailed him anonymously. No subject line. Just a burner account and one sentence. "I have the full documentation of a married woman cheating with a known photographer, funded through a secret credit card her husband discovered by accident. She's part of a nonprofit's board. He's featured in 2 local galleries. Interested?" He responded in less than 3 hours. "Yes." "When and where?" That was Monday. By Wednesday, I left a padded envelope in his newsroom mailbox with no return address. Inside, USB drive, timeline, transaction records, photos, a note that simply read, "Wait for the rest." While that baked, I took care of the personal front. Claire's birthday was approaching, and I made a decision that felt like pressing a cold blade against my own ribs. I threw her a surprise party. Friends, family, balloons, our children in matching outfits, a photographer, music, laughter, lying through my teeth. Every hug, every smile, it felt like performance art. A goodbye dressed as a celebration. She was radiant, beaming in a way I hadn't seen in years. When she leaned in that night and whispered, "Thank you, love. You've really made me feel special again," I almost broke. Because she meant it. Because she didn't know that 10 feet away, in her own living room, sat evidence of her undoing. Jason didn't come. Claire told me he was out of town on a shoot. I nodded, filed it away, knowing full well he was just laying low since our encounter. The next morning, I called our bank and froze our joint savings account. Nothing dramatic, just routine maintenance, I told them. I rerouted Maya and Jonah's college funds into a new custodian account under my name only. I called the insurance company, verified every policy, and adjusted beneficiaries with surgical precision. I wasn't just planning a divorce. I was prepping a siege. Then, the final stroke. I waited until Sunday morning, Claire's favorite day. She slept in. The kids were at a sleepover. We had the house to ourselves. She came downstairs in a robe, rubbing her eyes, murmuring something about coffee. I handed her an envelope. "What's this?" she asked, blinking. "I found something you should see." The moment she opened the folder, her face began to change. Slowly, like watching color drain from a painting. Photos, receipts, camera captures, text logs, dates. And then, on the final page, a note I typed and printed. "This is the truth. It's the only gift I have left to give you." She said nothing at first. She looked up at me, eyes wide. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her lips quivered. Her hand went to her chest. "You've been watching me?" she whispered. I nodded. "For how long?" "Long enough." She sat down, spine folding in on itself. Her robe shifted, exposing one bare leg that trembled ever so slightly. I never meant to hurt you." "That doesn't make it untrue. I didn't love him. Not the way I love you." I stared at her. My voice, when it came, was low and even. "Then why did you do it?" She blinked hard. "I don't know. I felt invisible. Like I was stuck in a loop. School runs, client calls, dinners. Repeat. He saw me. The version of me I used to be." I didn't respond. She tried again. "I was going to end it. I swear. I was. I thought maybe one more weekend, one last goodbye, and then you used our money." I cut in. "You opened a credit card behind my back. You booked hotels and bought gifts and rented a studio with someone who made you feel alive." I know. I messed up. I betrayed you." "You did," I said flatly. She leaned forward, reaching for my hand. I stepped back. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice cracking. I let the silence hang. Then, softly, "Now? You wait." And I left. I spent the rest of the day in the loft I'd rented across from Jason's. I watched the footage on my phone like a voyeur to my own downfall. I saw her collapse on the couch and bury her face in her hands. Saw her stare into space for hours. Then I pulled out my laptop. Marcus Gellert had replied again. "Got it. This is deeply personal. Are you ready for this to go wide?" I typed, "Not yet. But soon. Wait for my signal." He replied, "Understood. But be warned. Once I pull the trigger, there's no pulling it back." I sat there with that message open, heart pounding. My world had already changed. I was about to make sure hers did too. By Monday, whispers had started. An anonymous blog post surfaced titled "The Patron and the Photographer." No names. Just a story. Suspiciously detailed. Claire's circles began buzzing. Her nonprofit board group chat fell into an eerie silence. Jason's gallery removed his photo from their homepage. She called me 3 times that day. I didn't answer. I needed her to stew, to feel the panic of uncertainty. Because the next move wasn't just going to destroy their reputations. It was going to happen in front of everyone they knew. And I had a plan to make sure not a single soul could look away. Claire didn't come home Monday night. I woke up to silence. Her car was gone. Her toothbrush missing. The closet looked thinner by a dozen hangers. She hadn't said goodbye. Not to me. Not to the kids. Just absence, like a peeled-off sticker leaving a faint outline of what used to be. I knew where she was. Jason's loft. My phone buzzed around noon. A text from Claire. "I need time to think. Please don't do anything rash. For the kids." Rash. As if what I was doing wasn't the most careful, calculated, surgical act of vengeance I'd ever planned. She didn't realize this wasn't about impulse. It was about choreography. And the performance was about to begin. The next step was subtle. A single invitation. Digital. Elegant. Designed to look like a fundraiser gala for the local arts council. It was a real event. Claire's event, in fact. But the invite I crafted was a duplicate. Slightly altered. Same date. Same location. Same attire. But the guest list, that was mine. I sent it to Jason. From Claire's name. From a spoofed email nearly identical to her work account. He RSVP'd within minutes. That night, I called in the favor from Marcus. "I want the story to go live at exactly 7:45 p.m. this Friday. Not before." "You're sure?" he asked. "I want them to see it happen," I said. He didn't ask more questions. On Thursday, I packed the kids' bags. Told them we were going on a weekend trip, just the 3 of us. They beamed, excited. I had booked a cabin 2 hours away, on a lake, surrounded by nothing but trees and quiet. Claire didn't ask where they were. She hadn't called. I told my assistant to hold all calls until Monday. I turned off every location service on my devices. I bought a burner phone, just in case. Everything was set. Friday came. At 6 p.m. Claire arrived at the venue. Early, as always, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning for missing tablecloths or lighting snafus. She wore black silk, a plunging neckline, gold earrings I bought her for our 7th anniversary. She looked beautiful and tired. She didn't know Jason was already en route. He walked through the doors at 7:31 p.m., wearing a fitted gray suit and that easy smile he used in every self-portrait he posted online. Claire's eyes met his from across the room. Confusion, then panic. She approached him fast, mouth moving, hands gesturing. Jason looked around, unsure, then pulled out his phone. Checked the invite. Showed it to her. I could only imagine the words. I didn't send this. You weren't supposed to be here. But it didn't matter. Because at 7:45 p.m. sharp, every phone in that ballroom buzzed. The headline hit social media like a dropped match in a dry forest. Affair funded by fraud. Local arts director and gallery photographer exposed in secret financial scandal. 1,000 words, images, transaction records, side-by-side comparisons. Receipts, screenshots, a full timeline. Everything Marcus and I had put together, published with his usual gravitas and factual brutality. And in the center of it all, Claire's name. Jason's face. The room shifted. Glasses paused midair. Conversations faltered. Eyes turned toward them. Claire's clipboard slipped from her hand and clattered to the marble floor. Jason's mouth opened, but no words came. It was carnage. I didn't see it in person, but I didn't have to. Marcus sent me a photo. Claire, standing frozen in the middle of the ballroom. Her mascara smudged. Jason already edging toward the exit. Attendees backing away like they'd been asked to witness a crime scene. By morning, her board seat was revoked. Sponsors pulled their funding. Jason's gallery terminated his contract. His Instagram went private. Claire's business email was suspended, pending investigation. I expected satisfaction. I expected some primal thrill. But all I felt was stillness. Not peace. Not pride. Just silence. The kids laughed in the other room, unaware. Maya was building a tower of rocks, Jonah throwing sticks into the lake. I stood on the porch of the cabin, watching fog roll over the water, wondering if Claire had slept at all. Then my burner phone rang. Blocked number. I answered. Nothing for a second. Then, a breath. Was this you? She asked. There was no pretense left in her voice. No performance. Just rawness. You opened the door, I replied. But you didn't have to burn the house down, she whispered. I looked at the trees. You built it with gasoline and lies. She didn't speak again. The line stayed open, silent. After a minute, I said, I'll be back Sunday evening. The kids are fine. I didn't mean for any of this, she began, but I hung up. The sun had started to set. Maya was asking about dinner. Jonah had found a frog and wanted to name it. I smiled. The fire was still burning back home. But out here, it was quiet. Too quiet. And something in that silence felt unfinished. Because Jason wasn't done, and neither was Claire. I could feel it like a change in the weather. The storm I started? It wasn't over yet. By the time we returned home Sunday night, our street was quieter than I'd ever seen it. Not in the usual suburban way, with kids tucked into bed and porch lights casting sleepy halos. No, this was the hush of people pretending they hadn't read the headlines. Of neighbors who saw the wreckage but didn't want to be caught staring. Claire's car was gone. So was her name on the mailbox. She hadn't returned to the house. Inside, everything was as we left it. Toys scattered in the den. Maya's half-done coloring page. Jonah's pirate ship built from Legos. In the kitchen, a bouquet of sunflowers wilted in a vase on the counter. A card poked from the stems. It was unsigned. I didn't touch it. That night, I lay awake long after the kids had fallen asleep. I listened to the creaks of the house, the way old places hum when they're empty in all the wrong ways. My mind ran laps over everything. Every lie, every receipt, every word she never said. And finally, one question I hadn't let myself ask before. Why him? Jason Maddox. His name alone had become a toxin in my mind. I couldn't shake it. I thought I was done with them. Burned the field, salted the earth. But there was something unfinished. Something still pulsing beneath the surface. So I made a choice. I paid him a visit. Not at the loft. That lease had been terminated. But I found his new location through a trail of breadcrumbs, an update on his website, a tagged photo of a new studio opening, some local event he was scheduled to photograph. I showed up early. The studio was in a narrow brick building downtown. Exposed beams. High ceilings. The kind of space Claire would have called warm industrial. Jason was alone when I walked in. He recognized me instantly. I figured you'd come eventually, he said, barely glancing up from the light meter in his hand. I didn't speak at first. Just looked at him. Really looked. He wasn't as composed this time. His eyes were tired, His jaw stubbled, and the corner of his mouth twitched as he worked. "I'm not here to fight," I finally said. "No? What then?" "I want to know," I said, stepping closer. "Was it just physical? Or did you love her?" He met my gaze and held it. "I didn't think I did," he said. But she kept showing up, saying things I'd never heard before. Things like, "You make me feel like I exist again." He shrugged. Eventually, I started believing her. I let that hang in the air. "She said the same thing to me once," I said quietly. He blinked. I was 26. We were sharing cheap Chinese food in a new apartment with no furniture. She said, "You're the first person who sees me." I thought it meant something. That maybe I was the only one who ever had. Jason didn't respond. I nodded. "You weren't the first," I said. "You weren't the last. You were just next." That struck him harder than I expected. He looked down. "I didn't know about the card," he muttered. "Or the lies. I thought you two were done." I offered. "Bored? Distant?" He flinched. "Let me guess. She told you I was cold, controlling, that she felt like a ghost in our house. And you, the brave artist, brought her back to life." He exhaled slowly, shame blooming across his face like a stain. "I thought I was saving her," he whispered. "No," I said. "You were helping her escape herself. It's not the same thing." He nodded, then looked away. "I loved her," he said, as if it still held value. "But I think she just wanted a mirror." "Then maybe it's time you stopped being one." I left without another word. 2 weeks passed. Claire finally reached out. No phone call this time, just a handwritten letter, dropped in the mailbox like something out of another century. It was neat. No smudges. No perfume. Just 6 pages of reflection, apologies, attempts to explain what went wrong. She didn't ask me to forgive her. She didn't ask to come back. She just wrote. Somewhere in the middle, she said something I hadn't expected. The affair was the symptom, not the disease. I folded the letter and slid it into a box with the rest: receipts, photographs, copies of the blog, the binder labeled her. I taped the lid shut and carried it to the attic, wedging it behind the old baby gate and the Christmas lights. Not forgotten, but done. 2 months later, our divorce was finalized. We split the house. I kept primary custody. She moved across town into a 1-bedroom apartment. The kids visit her every other weekend. They don't ask many questions, just enough to remind me they're watching everything, absorbing the silences as much as the words. One night, Maya asked, "Why don't you kiss Mommy goodbye anymore?" I paused, crouched beside her, and said gently, "Because sometimes loving someone means letting them go." She nodded, thoughtful in that way only kids can be. "But we still love her, right?" I smiled. "Always." Jason vanished from our lives. His studio closed 6 weeks after my visit. Rumor was he moved west. New city, new name. His website went dark. I didn't care. But Claire? Claire sends postcards now. From museums, hiking trails, quiet coffee shops. She signs them Mom or C, depending on the mood. Sometimes she draws little doodles in the margins, trees, coffee cups, stars. And for the first time in a long time, they feel honest. The credit card is gone. But what it bought, pain, truth, freedom, lingers. There are still days I miss the version of her I married. Still nights I wake up reaching for a woman who no longer exists. But more often, I wake to the soft sound of Jonah snoring in the next room, to Maya's footsteps padding toward the kitchen, to a house that is lighter, if emptier. And I breathe. I rebuild, not in spite of what happened, but because of it.